Double Dragon Revive, as the name suggests, is the latest in a long line of Double Dragon reboots, remakes, sequels, and resurrections. It's also entirely absent of the original work's personality, game design style, or purpose. It feels as hollow as it looks, swapping out retro-style arcade action for awkward full 3D movement, a needlessly complex narrative, and nearly mindless combat against mountains of forgettable mooks. It fumbles at every layer of identity and execution. That being so, let's dig through it one layer at a time. Firstly, and most regrettably, the story and stylization. Revive presents a fundamentally simple story bloated to the point of idiocy. There's an evil gang doing evil things, and you go stop them. That's the crux of it, alright? But there are 3 subplots to keep track of, a core cast of 10 characters, some one-off characters who seem like they're meant to be important but really aren't, and none of it adds depth or nuance to the core premise. No matter how long these verbose dialogue scenes drag on, you're still just trying to stop an evil gang, and any other information could have easily been communicated through visual storytelling or left to implication. To make matters worse, these are some of the dullest, most uninteresting characters in fiction. They state all their character traits out loud and have perfectly calculated, perfectly inoffensive relationships with one another. There's no drama, no disagreements, no dynamism. Watching the plot play out feels like eating a really big saltine cracker, and no, you may not have any water or soup or cheese to go with that. The proper gameplay is equally poor, bearing just as little resemblance to, well, Double Dragon. It largely centers around a host of gimmicks, which the game actually literally calls gimmicks. For example, there's fully 3D movement instead of 2.5D, there are environmental kills, pulls to swing from, wall jump, ground slam, super moves, telegraphed enemy charge attacks, and so on. But none of these enhance the core combat any, because they're a distraction from the base brawling, not a boon. Especially in the case of the revamped movement, having full control over your character's direction makes proper positioning needlessly laborious. When you do dig through all the gimmicks to the actual meat and bones, it's not bad at least. Each playable character has vastly different utilities, featuring dynamic combos and secondary attacks that are substantive without any overbearing complexity. There's room for experimentation and skill. Unfortunately, it's all pretty irrelevant when the actual enemies you fight are so inconsequential. From beginning to end, nearly every beat-em-up segment is a thoughtless haze of button mashing, as your opposition is flattened beneath your indiscriminate fists. There are ostensibly a ton of enemy types to contend with, but I only memorized one of them, and that's just because it takes slightly longer to drain his health. The bosses are contrarily far more memorable and meaningful, but that's largely due to their abundance of set pieces and special attacks, not their AI or mechanical nuance. Still, they do present actual challenge where the rest of the game fails. For context, as ever, I was playing on hard mode, even though the game's idea of difficulty seems to be make health bar bigger. There's a lot more I could say about the poorly implemented platforming gauntlets or easily broken scripting or lackluster AI, but you get the point. Revive is a poor beat-em-up, a poor story, and a poor representation of the Double Dragon franchise. Despite all that, it does still have a high skill ceiling, it's mercifully absent of any RPG elements, and I'd readily recommend it over Double Dragon Gaiden or Double Dragon 4. Because however bad it might be, at least it made me think sometimes.